Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a TV review and I'll be having a look at the pilot episode of The Witches of East End. Now, I actually thought this TV series was going to be about the Witches of Eastwick, but apparently it isn't. It's actually based on a series of books, but the title is very similar and it is about witches. Now, I'll say from the get-go, this TV show is probably not made for me in my sort of tastes in mind. That said, I'm going to try and review it on a kind of objective basis for the target demographic that I believe it is actually aiming for. And I would say that target demographic is probably the kind of people who really enjoy things like the Vampire Diaries, Secret Circle, stuff like that. Ultimately, it's about a family of witches led by the kind of the matriarch played by Julia Ormond, who's this kind of centuries-old witch, but she's basically sort of stayed in her sort of the age that she's obviously is now in real life. So basically, it's telling us that she's immortal. And one of the interesting things that this show does actually, it essentially tells us the witches each have curses, and there's two sisters in this pilot episode. So I'll come on to the second sister in just a second. So Julia Ormond's curse basically is that she's cursed to have two children throughout the life, and basically the two children are both female and both witches themselves, and ultimately when they grow up, ultimately they die at the hands of magic. So all throughout history, ultimately she's having these same two children, and ultimately they're getting killed by some type of magical, some sort of burning at the stake, stuff like that basically. So this one obviously setting sort of contemporary times, she decided that she's going to kind of raise them as if they have no knowledge of magic, and basically these two girls ultimately think that they're kind of normal people. One girl maybe thinks she's a little bit psychic, the other one is kind of like in the pilot episode at least, a firm skeptic. Now in this pilot episode we have the return of the other sister, played by an actress whose name I can't pronounce, and she was from Twin Peaks, and there seems to be some kind of threat involved, or some kind of enemy of the witches, probably some sort of ancient rival ultimately, and she's sort of taken the form of Julia Ormond's character and committing murders and ultimately setting her up for the fall. So basically this pilot episode is very much sort of setting up the world. Now the sister has a kind of curse where she sort of turned into a cat and is ultimately got 9 lives. We don't know how many lives she's got or she's got left, and she doesn't even know, but that's ultimately her curse. But once again, if she's a sister, I'm assuming she's kind of sort of at least immortal to the point where she doesn't age. Now the two daughters, I say they don't know that they're witches at the beginning of this episode, although it's leading to the fact they'll probably soon know that they're witches at some point in the near future. One of their daughters, Freya, is kind of setting up as this kind of like love triangle, as they always seem to do in these kind of TV shows and films, with a hunky rich guy and his sort of equally hunky brother, and the other daughter, who's the more skeptical one, is basically sort of eyeing up this police detective and what have you. So one thing this show does do, I would say, fairly well, it kind of sets out a fairly good mythology. First of all, in the actual pilot episode, I have to say the first half maybe of the pilot episode was fairly dull, and I was so tempted to turn it off, but I thought I'd soldier on just so I could see the whole show. And I have to say, I think it did pick up in the second half. This show certainly isn't made for me. It's not a show that I'll probably bother watching, I have to say. But I think if you are the target demographic, I think you'll really get a kick out of it. As I say, the storyline is probably fairly clever in the fact that it kind of grabs you fairly early on, and it makes you maybe want to wonder what's going to happen. But one of the things I personally didn't like about that, it's so kind of like just typical kind of glossy TV. You know, you've got the attractive daughters, you've got the attractive guides, you've kind of got the black supporting characters that are waiting to be in sort of fairly supporting roles and stuff like that. So I didn't really like that fact, to be honest. It just seems to be very like cookie cutter, run of the mill. This made by committee TV. I personally think this is something that's going to think, right, this is going to get a target audience. We'll take kind of no risks with it. It's going to be a very much cookie cutter TV show. It's going to kind of loop in the same crowd that watches all these other sort of TV shows. Now that's not to say that you shouldn't like it because of that, but I just think it's just a money grab ultimately to sort of get this sort of audience without really sort of trying to do anything new with the genre. But this is going to be a question of taste. It's not for me, but I think it does have its audience, and I think the audience that are going to be watching it will probably like it. It does seem to sort of maybe kind of set out its mythology quite well. So if you're a fan of this sort of type of shows, I'm going to give it a 6.5 because I think you'll probably like it. So above average if you are kind of interested in this kind of sort of TV shows, this type of thing. However, if you're not interested in like things like the Vampire Diaries, you ain't going to be interested in this. Let me know what your thoughts of the pilot is. Leave me a comment. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.